You're listening to Bigfoot Society, and I'm Jeremiah Byron. In this show, we go beyond the campfire stories to bring you firsthand encounters from people who say they've seen something impossible, from backwoods trails and remote mountain haulers to quiet farms and crowded highways. The stories come from everywhere, and each one leaves us with more questions than answers. These are the voices of the people who've lived it, so settle in, because today you'll hear another account that just might change the way you see the woods forever. So stay with us. All right, Bigfoot Society, we've got the privilege of talking to AP today. AP is a outdoorsman, hunter from down there in Missouri, and we're going to be talking about the area of Roby, Missouri today. But welcome to the show, AP. How are you doing today, sir?
Good, sir. How are you?
Doing great. Is there anything else that the listeners might need to know about you before we start heading right into what you experienced there?
Just basically a simple background. I grew up in the Northeast on the border of New York and Pennsylvania. Pretty much was indoctrinated into the woods because of where we lived in the 80s and 90s. I was probably the definition of a free-range parenting plan. And my parents just cut me loose during the days when I didn't have school and whatnot. So most of my free time was always spent in the woods. All my family hunted and fished, and from a very early age, I was brought up in the woods. And big thing about that is at the early age, I was taught woodsmanship and how the land lays out, how to do certain tasks inside the woods. And then eventually it progressed into me being able to go out on my own and hunt and do those things. And the woodsmanship is definitely a huge factor in if you're going to eat or not that winter with the game that you harvest and everything. As a kid, when I was off from school, I would spend all my summer in the woods just monkeying around. And in the morning, you would go out and you'd fill up a gallon milk jug full of water, and you would just drop down into a creek bottom, and you just go from there, and wherever you popped out during the day, you'd find yourself a road and take it back home. And after that, I grew up there, and probably in the late 90s, I decided to join the military and got into the military police corps in the late 90s, and had the privilege, I guess you could say, just depends on who you talk to, of being stationed at Fort Leonard Wood there right off the bat. And I immediately fell in love with the area outside the back gate of Fort Leonard Wood, which at the time we didn't have cell phones or anything, but it was enormous for government land for the Mark Twain National Forest. So everywhere you pretty much went outside that south gate was all Mark Twain National Forest. And I made it a point to myself. I said, if I make this a career, this is where I want to retire, because this is just such a unique area and everything. It's a sportsman's delight just to be able to go out your back door and within 2 or 3 minutes, you're in forest, private or public land. So it was pretty awesome. But I spent most of my time in the MP Corps. I was a patrolman, worked my way up into investigations, things of that nature and stuff. So I've seen a lot of interesting things throughout my 20-plus year career. And right there about the time it was a little bit after COVID, probably a few years after COVID, I decided to hang it up and was fortunate enough to get the Army to send me back to Fort Leonard Wood to spend the rest of my time in the Army and get to retire and stuff like that. But after that, I kind of ended up starting a little business, and pretty well known and everything in the area and stuff. And it's centered around turkey hunting, because it was the only thing that I absolutely thought was a challenge growing up as a kid, was turkey hunting. And I made my bread and butter doing that, and learned everything I could about turkeys, biology, you name it, and the vocalizations and whatnot. So I'm pretty well versed in the turkey hunting community. I spent a lot of time deer hunting and things like that, but nothing really got my gears going, such as turkey hunting and stuff. Yeah, that's a little bit about my background there.
Which I think it's important to hear all that, because not only do you know everything that should be in those woods, but you also have the background of investigation from your time in the military. So you've got an eye for detail when something's out of place, And so it'll be very interesting to see how that all plays in. But AP, feel free to take us back to when you first started noticing things were a little out of place in your experiences in this area.
And just to piggyback off of what you were saying, Jeremiah, the investigations and just being a police officer, your BS meter is always on high and everything. When someone tells you anything, so to preface this, I'm going to say that I was a healthy skeptic. And later on, I'll tell you what kind of started changing my mind about this. I'm very level-headed, and I don't rattle easy at all. Like, I've been to war zones throughout my 20-plus years in the military. I spent probably 5 or 6 of those years deployed into Iraq. So I've seen a lot of things, a lot of combat, and coming back to the U.S., the normal rigors of day-to-day, like the troubles and everything, it's hard to rattle me over things and stuff. So I discount a lot of things as I just chalk it up to happenstance or coincidence and stuff like that. But the details I'm about ready to give you, I just want to say that I'm going to give you the facts to the listeners, and I'm not going to season the details to make them any more interesting or palatable or get anybody hyped up. I'm just going to tell you what happened, and everybody can make their own decision off of that. So this kind of started and took place and got going in the spring of 2018. Like I said, I'm well known in the area for actually being a turkey hunter and stuff. So I have a lot of friends in the area. It's a small community, so there's probably you'd be hard-pressed to count 1,000 people in the general area between Roby, Evening Shade, where I live, and the Plato area. So it's maybe 1,000-plus people that live in that general area and stuff. Now, where I live and where this is all going to take place is in between two what you would call river systems. So you have the Ruby Dune River that sits more over there to the northwest of Texas County. And then you have the Big Piney River that comes through there, and it's all jutting through the Mark Twain National Forest up out of the Houston Licking area out of Texas County. It started in 2018. So a cattle rancher buddy of mine who I do a lot of thermal and depredation stuff for him during cattle season or calving season, he has a business too. And I happened to see him and he's, oh, hey, I just picked up this new farm and everything on a lease. I don't have it for very long. I only got it for a 2-year span, but there's some turkeys in there. And he throws me the keys to the gate and he's, have at it. Just go up there and see what you can do, because he was a turkey hunter as well. And he had already tried in there and he's like, there's some tough turkeys. And he was just gladly threw me a copy of the key to the front gate. He's use it for whatever you want and just have at it. So I went up there probably the same day. I was pretty excited. I was like a pig seeing mud for the first time. I was like, boy, I got a whole farm all to myself. So to give you a lay of the land, this farm that I'm going to talk about is probably about 3 miles west by northwest of Roby, Missouri, just off of Highway 32. The locals call it by a totally different name and everything, but I'm not going to give too much away because it's actually one of my favorite spots still to this day. But I went up there and unlocked the gate, got in there, and my first impressions is just, it's something, it felt desolate, like it was lacking like life, and it was just an eerie feeling. If I was to put a pin on it, I just felt a little kind of uneasy, but I chalked it up to, this is new land, we've got to learn it and stuff. Maybe you're just overexcited and whatnot. So I got this uneasy I wouldn't really say it was uneasy, but do you know when you're in someplace new and you're just like, man, something just doesn't, it's not jiving with me right now and stuff. I went through that whole turkey season on that farm, and outside of that first initial day or two and stuff, I was actually pretty successful on it. And I was like, as long as he keeps this farm, I'm going to just keep using it. Now, the farm is connected. It's about a 250-acre farm, and it's all surrounded pretty much by Mark Twain National Forest. There's a white chat government road that runs into the farm, and that's how you get to it. If you're not really local or you haven't been there from out of state and actually turkey hunted the area for a period of time, you really wouldn't know that this little patch exists up there in that corner and stuff. So I was pretty successful that 2018 season. Didn't have any issues or anything that I can remember off the top of my head that really happened to me, other than the fact that those first initial days were kind of like, they're not, I wouldn't say unsettling, but they just put me a little bit on edge and stuff. We go into the 2019 spring season, and Missouri usually opens up like, I think it's, I can't remember, it was 16th, 17th, or 18th that year, but they open up right about that time. So I was still in the military, so how I worked it is like for turkey season, I would always block out, try to use like at least 2 weeks to 3 weeks of leave in that time frame, so I could dedicate it all to turkey hunting. So that opening morning of the spring 2019 season, I go back up to that same farm. I open the gate and I pull into down the farm road into this little pasture area that has an old, I'd say it's probably built in the 1940s, old style farmhouse. It was dilapidated. So I faced my front towards that farmhouse. And this was probably about 4 o'clock in the morning, because the first day of turkey season, if you're a turkey hunter, you're always amped up and getting ready for the first day of season, what it's going to bring for you and everything. So I pull in there, turn off my headlights, and I turn off the truck, and I go to doing what everybody does, is eating breakfast and drinking too much coffee that's probably you're going to regret probably like 30 or 45 minutes later. I'm sitting there shoving little Debbie cakes in my face, trying to get some energy and everything for what I'm going to have for the day. And there's no light. And I remember the moon was out, but it was cloudy that morning and everything. So I'm sitting there facing this farmhouse, and there's no light in the truck. There's no real ambient light except for the moon. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I start seeing what appears to be a lantern light that exits this farmhouse, this dilapidated farmhouse. It's almost, I guess you would call it what people refer to as orbs. And it looks like a lantern light, and it's just steady moving on a single plane across from me. And I'm only about 25 to 30 yards away, and this thing's the size of a basketball. But it looks the intensity of what a lantern light would be. So I immediately started looking. I'm like, is that a reflection from headlight coming into the gate? Because you always have to think that you might get a trespasser, or there's going to be people hunting the government land and stuff that might be used. I'm looking around. I was like, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Somebody else has got to be out here and everything. So I keep looking at it, and I'm just like, no, that's like literally 25 yards in front of my face. So I had my window down that morning, so I hang my head out the window, kind of looking like Ace Ventura, and I'm watching this. It didn't go away because I thought it was something that was having to do with my window, the front window shield of the car. So I hang my head out, and I'm looking, and it's still there, and I was like, what in God's name is that? And I just chalked it up, and it didn't really rattle me. I just thought it was interesting. I've heard of people seeing ball lightning before, and you always get people that say swamp gas or whatever. I'm up at a high point. I've never seen swamp gas up there usually, and there's no swamp around. There's no running water around at all. So that's what kicked off the opening morning of turkey season for me in 2019. Now, fast forward to 2 weeks later, because I run a business and I had a bunch of people that had bought a lot of stuff from me that year, and I always offer and open up my house that I have there in Evening Shade to some clients that purchase from me and stuff throughout the year. Hey, come on in. I'll take you on a turkey hunt or whatever up here in the Mark Twain. You don't have to pay anything, no lodging or anything like that. So these two guys, they gladly came, and I was like, since there's two of us, my wife, who is actually active duty military still to this day, she's a field grade officer out of West Point. She's probably more, I would say, more fact oriented in reality and stuff like that than I am. She's always got that little skeptical. She always calls me on things when I get too outlandish or whatever. And she's she's very level-headed and everything. So I told her, I was like, hey, since you're on vacation too, you can help me this morning. We'll split up and we'll go up to the old farm up there on top. And she gladly said, yeah, because she turkey hunts and fishes. She grew up doing it just like the same way I pretty much did. And so we're all standing up there, and I didn't want to take these guys into the farm. So we decided, okay, we're going to go up there and we'll park our vehicles. I would say it's about a half mile down the road, and we'll walk towards the front gate of the farm down this white chat road that leads to it. So we get on this road. It's probably, I would say it's probably about 5:30, 5:45-ish. And none of us are loaded because you're standing on a road. So I'd always tell people, like, hey, if we're standing up on the road, make sure the guns are unloaded. If we get on something, we'll step into the woods, load up there, and we'll go from there and everything. So that's how I run it and everything. So we're all standing up there on this white chat road. We're probably about 100 yards from the front gate of the farm. And we're all facing back to the north. And how this lays out is that the turkeys will roost over this little lip and everything that's probably about 100 yards from the edge of this white chat road. And if you've ever hunted turkey before, you always want to keep the mentality of always stay on top of the turkey in the morning and hunt your way downhill and everything. It's very hard to call a turkey downhill too because of the biology of it, but it can be done. But I've always had the best luck of starting higher in the morning and then working my way down to them. And so we're all standing up there facing back to the north, and the woods are you're in that when it's just starting to break. You're not completely, it's not completely light, but it's still dark where you can just make out a person and stuff. So we're all standing there. I've got the two gentlemen to my left, and I've got my wife who's standing probably about 5 or 6 foot from me on my right. And we're just standing there and we're listening to see what, is going to happen. Usually when the woods start waking up, as soon as the birds start chirping, about 5 or 10 minutes after that, the first turkey gobbles. So we're standing there, and out of the blue, the birds are going now. So there's songbirds chirping and everything. So out of the blue, it's just, I couldn't really put a finger on it, but I could make out the words. Over that lip, I hear it's almost like broken English, but it's very deep and has this, I would say it's a gargly roll to it and everything. And it sounded like, hey, what are you doing? And I was just like, and when this happened, Jeremiah, I'm probably 100 yards from that lip. The noise that came off of that, whatever that was over that lip, when it said what it was saying, it literally hit me in the chest. You could feel the vibration from what it was almost instantly hit you. And it was like, holy crap. And if you've ever hunted turkeys before, I can compare it to like when you get a gobbler that comes in and he's getting probably within 10 to 15 yards and he gobbles, you can feel that thump hit you in the chest. And you can, if you're sitting on the ground, you can actually feel it in your legs, just the base of it. This thing had some ungodly bass to it. And I'm standing there, and when this hit me, like, I watched the two guys off to my left take a step back. And I don't have a gun because I had already punched a tag that year, and my wife has a gun, and these two guys have a gun. So when that happened, all of a sudden they cave in on me, and they're like, what was that? And I just stood there, and I'm not shaken by it at all. I'm just like, now I'm perplexed. I was like, in 33 years in the woods, I don't use flashlights. I don't do anything like that. But for the first time in almost 33 years, I pulled out a flashlight and started shining it. And they weren't worried about what the flashlight was looking at. They were in my ear, like, what was that? And I was like, I don't know. I gave them the fact-based answer. I don't know. It's the truth. And they're like, we're not moving nowhere. until the sun's up and we can see everything. And the woods were, at that point, the woods went completely silent. There was no songbirds singing, no turkeys gobbling. It was completely dead, and graveyard dead. So we stood there, and I looked at my wife, and she just looked at me, and she says, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I felt it." I felt it. It rumbled my chest. And so these guys are still standing there, and I wasn't too shaken by it, but these guys, they were pretty taken back by it. They're like, "We're not moving until it's good broad daylight out." That was something really weird. So something I will tell you from that morning, which struck me as pretty odd. And again, if you've turkey hunted long enough, you'll know that turkeys usually don't fly down unless they can see what's on the ground in the morning, or they know where the hens are, or typically if they stay up in the tree for past what we would call fly down time, typically coyotes are notorious for keeping turkeys in the tree. Predators are notorious for keeping turkeys in the tree. We ended up hearing a turkey gobble about, I would say it was about 400, 500 meters back up this lip, going more towards, I would say, the east. So I made my way back up there, and we all set up. I got these two guys set up on the turkey, and I'm sitting there looking, and he gobbled again. I was like, "Where the heck is this turkey at?" It is like 9:15 in the morning and stuff, and that was my first gobble. And I'm like looking around, and I'm like, I'm trying to put a pin on him where he's at, and I look over about 80 yards, and this tom is still in the tree. It's 9:15, which is not really absurd, but it was a bluebird clear day. If the sun was shining, there's no reason why this turkey is generally up in the tree. They do weird things, but I'm like, this bird is still up in this tree. And then I look over about another 50 yards back over to the west, and I can see all the hens up there still. And I'm like, now that's super weird. I was like, usually the hens are the first ones down in the morning and stuff. So I was like, maybe there's coyotes that kept them up there this long. It definitely wasn't for the weather, because a lot of times on foggy mornings, you'll see that they'll hang up in the trees a lot later and stuff. So that was something that was really peculiar to me that kind of it raised a red flag. I was like, maybe there's coyotes running through over in here this morning or something that kept them up and everything. But after that, I just put it in the back of my mind. I really didn't think much of it and everything. Like I said, I'm a healthy skeptic. I was always in the camp of there's always a rational explanation for everything. And as a law enforcement officer, I always used Occam's razor for pretty much everything. I looked at it and I was like, what's the most probable thing that happened on that ridge yesterday? Maybe it was a bear. But then again, I was like, well, I've heard bears before, and bears don't, when they gargle like that, and if they gargle or make any noise, it usually doesn't feel like someone's hitting you in the chest with a frying pan and stuff. You don't get that bassy tone like that and stuff. I was like, it's just weird. And then I got to thinking about it. I was like, that lip has like almost a 10-foot drop to it. If there was something standing under that lip, it would have had to been taller than that lip to get that vocalization to just throw that way like that and cause that bass to really hit us like that. I was like, maybe it was standing on top of the lip. I don't know. But that was that first strange incident that happened in there. And I was just like, wow, it's just something, me being in that, healthy skeptic camp, I was like, I had a rational explanation for it. So I just threw it in the closet and really didn't go back and revisit it at all. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit, made it through the rest of the turkey season. And now I'm not what you would call a Bigfoot enthusiast or anything like that. I haven't really studied much of anything. So, as far as seeing any other sign or anything in the area that I've heard on your podcast before, I really wasn't looking for it. Now I will, but I really never investigated any further into these things or looked into seeing if I could find any tracks or footprints or anything like that. I just wrote the whole incident off and threw it in the back of my head. But then we're going to fast forward into the end of Missouri's gun season in 2019, and the rifle season was over. And my wife is a huge bow hunter, and she loves to bow hunt. And she really liked that farm and whatnot. So she wanted to go back up there. There was a good spot that she wanted to set up on. The wind was right and everything. So she went by herself, because at that time of the year, I'm really busy with my business and whatnot. So I was like, you go have fun. So she left in the early morning, went up there, got in stand. And it was probably about 2:00 in the afternoon. I get a text message and it reads, "Hey, I need you to come up here and pick me up right now." I was thinking to myself, lady, you drove your truck up there. I was like, is there something wrong with the truck? She's, no, you need to come up here to the farm and get me out of this tree stand. I was like, are you okay? She's like, yes. So I didn't ask any other questions other than the fact that, hey, are you okay? This and that. Are you in any trouble? No, I'm not in any trouble. So I get up there. I'm thinking she's going to surprise me. She shot this one buck that we had seen up there a month earlier. So I get up there and I walk down to where I know she's at, and I'm looking around and I see her up in the tree, and she's coming down out of the tree. And I'm like, what's going on? She's like, listen, she's like, for the last hour and a half, I've been hearing things bang against trees. Like it sounds like a shotgun going off, like it's just hitting trees. And I can hear what sounds like Indian drums and flutes, like a fife playing and stuff. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like I said, she's more level-headed than I am, and she's more into the facts, and I would say probably a little bit more healthy of a skeptic than I am. And to see her jarred and rattled like that, it was like, that's interesting. I was like, first we got now all these two incidences that I've had over the last year and a half. I'm like, they're piecing together. I'm like, first I got this ball of light that's coming out of the farmhouse up there. Then I've got this unexplained like grumble and everything that's shooting back at me, feeling like I get hit in the chest with a frying pan. And then I've got my wife saying that she's hearing things bang against the tree really loud and hearing drums and flutes. And there was no wind that day. It was probably the least breezy day of that late season. There was some wind, but not enough to like really chalk it up to the wind going through the trees and everything. That was the run of those three incidences on that farm. Now I'll fast forward to 2020. And I'm on Google, so my business is on Google and everything. So if you ever come into the Mark Twain Forest and you're turkey hunting, you'd probably be able to find my business on Google and stuff. So I had these gentlemen that were from out of state in the 2020 turkey season. They stopped into the shop one day, and my truck sits right out front. So it's not really hard to – you could peg me out in the National Forest. Oh, hey, that's him. I know who that is. They're hunting there. These two or three, I think it was three gentlemen come into the shop. They're from out of state, and they're like, hey, we'd like to get something, this and that. So I was like, oh, yeah, no problem. They're like, hey, you're the guy that hunts up there. I don't want to name the road, but on such and such road. And I was like, yeah, how did you know that? I was like, I hunt that farm. I have my friend leases it and stuff back there in the corner and everything. They're like, yeah, we've seen your truck parked down there at the end quite a few times. And they brought up some stuff like turkey hunting related. And they're like, yeah, we're not hunting that place ever again. You can have it. And I was like, I kind of piqued my curiosity. And I was like, why aren't you guys going to hunt it? It's still really good and everything. And they're like, we were down there hunting. And this was just that week of turkey season that they were there. And they were like, yeah, we were down there hunting. And whoever was hunting up there, we thought it was you, was throwing rocks down at us down the hill. We couldn't see anything. We just figured it was another turkey hunter that was local that was trying to get us out of there and everything. And I just looked at them and I was like, they were throwing rocks at you? And so it was really interesting. I piqued my curiosity. I was like, so now I got that. And now I've got the three incidences coming back to me. And I'm like, that's super strange. Again, time passes and we get into 2025. And it didn't have any more incidences up there after that because I ripped that place off again, to say the least. And my buddy didn't keep the lease after 2020, I believe. So I really didn't have a use for it, but it still was a really good hunting area to hunt turkey in, at least. Good habitat and good mix of timber and everything that turkeys would like. But I was sitting, and this is how I found you, and this all came to fruition, is I'd written all that stuff off, and I watch a lot of turkey hunting episodes and everything, and it was kind of like all the stars aligned at once. And I seen this one episode that popped up, and I don't think it was from you, Jeremiah, but I'm a faithful listener to you, but this is kind of what got me back down on this road of what the heck was all that stuff combined. But it showed turkey hunter has encounter with Sasquatch in Roby, Missouri. I'm thinking to myself, get the heck out of here. So being inquisitive, I pull that stuff up and I start watching it. And I know the guy. I literally know who this guy is. I see him pretty frequently, and I'm like, this dude has never said a word about this. And he's given a full-on interview, and I know the location by heart. I could take you right to it that this happened. And I'm like looking at it, and I was like, that's up on that road. And I know exactly where that is. So you know how the YouTube algorithm works. Once time you watch one Bigfoot thing, the algorithm starts coming up with all these other Bigfoot things. And just so happened the stars aligned. My wife had taken vacation to go see some family in Marion. What the heck time was it? It was probably June-ish, maybe July. And she comes back to the house after this vacation, and she says, hey, I just got done at this Bigfoot festival. And she's looking at my algorithm. She's like, I went to this Bigfoot festival in Marion, and this is what I thought. And I was like, oh, that's all, hogwash and this and that. She's like, oh, really, is it? And she brought up the incidences from back up there on the road during the 2019 spring turkey season. She's like, do you know what that was? And I was like, I don't. And everything that I was hearing at this Bigfoot festival kind of lines up with that. So I was like, being a healthy skeptic, I was like, I'm very open-minded to other people's thoughts and opinions, and maybe even facts for that matter. You can't dispute the facts. So I was like, I need to go find something that changes me from being a healthy skeptic into, okay, there might be some credence to this and everything. And the first thing that I roll up upon, I think I typed into YouTube like Holy Grail of Bigfoot or whatever. And the Patterson, Patterson Gimlet video pops up. And I think the guy's name was MK Davis, and he was doing the breakdown analysis of all this, and he was getting close-ups and everything. And I, as a police officer, we actually get trained. We do courses in gait analysis and everything. So I'm watching this, and I was like, holy crap. I was like, that skin is moving with that Bigfoot walking. You can see the striations and muscle and skin and everything. And I'm like, that's pretty profound evidence. I was like, okay. I was like, the next thing I pull up, and I think it was right underneath that from the Sierra Mountains. Yeah, maybe you can help me out with this. It happened in the 70s. And I want to say it was, they called it Sierra Sounds or something like that.
Exactly.
Oh, dude, I got about 30 seconds into that, and I about fell over in my chair. I was like, holy crap. I was like, that's exactly what came over that lip in the morning. And it sounded like English, but it sounded like, I could say it sounded like language, and it sounded like, hey, what are you doing? That was about 30 seconds into that, kind of really tipped the point over into, okay, there's something to this. And then I started down this, I wouldn't even call it a rabbit hole, because now I've got some pretty unrefutable proof that's not doctored. It's very hard when you see the older stuff, like they didn't have the technology that we have now. So I'm like, okay, there's some pretty good evidence right here. So let me keep going. And I start doing Google searches and stuff. I want to hear from police officers, because to me, hearing from other police officers is, I'm like, okay, I know the mindset, I know the mentality and stuff because I was a cop for 20 plus years. And I'm like, I know where their heads are at. So let me hear something. So all of a sudden these 911 calls start coming up, and it's a guy that got his dog thrown over the backyard trees a day earlier. And from listening and being trained to listen to 911 calls, we deal with it in training and stuff. This guy was no BS. You could hear the change of inflections and seriousness in this guy's voice. I was like, okay. I was like, so there's something to this. I'm no longer really skeptical on this. I'm like, now I'm in the camp of what can we find or what can we do to get better evidence out there in this day and age in an environment that's polluted with AI and everything, because everything you kind of see nowadays is just as an AI, because AI is really good, and you got to be like an AI expert to like really look at stuff and be like, oh, that's BS. What's gospel and what's gorilla poo right now? That's like how I ended up finding you, is throughout, like, I'm researching this. So if I had to give a percentage of like where I was when this all started, I was probably sitting in the 5% range of, yeah, Bigfoot might exist, whatever, stranger things have happened and everything like that. Now I sit in the camp of it's 85 to 90% like this is something that is definitely real, but I don't know what it is. And like, I've had philosophies on a lot of this stuff since I got into that, and my wife kicked me upside the head and said, hey, you might want to slow it back and not be so dismissive of this stuff and everything. So I've done my own research and kind of had some philosophies on what it might be and stuff. But yeah, that's about it. And the end of all that crazy little string of events.
Wow, AP, what a journey that you went on since 2018, right? That's incredible.
Yeah.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's probably people out there with better occurrences and everything, but I thought it was very interesting. And it happened in an area after doing the research where people are having, I wouldn't say a crazy amount of sightings, but there's incidences, and they're recent incidences and stuff.
Oh, okay. So that's actually, I'm going to ask you that. That's something I'm going to ask later, but a few little questions I want to ask first. So you saw the orbs, or you said it was like the lantern type orb. Do you remember what color that was?
It looked like a reddish white.
Okay.
It would almost fluctuate between like a yellowy white, like it almost looked like it almost turned pink at one point, but it kept on one single plane. There was no bouncing to it. It didn't rise. It just kind of kept on a single plane. And I would say the speed of it moving was probably about the speed of an average person, the speed an average person would walk.
That's really interesting. Also, the way that you described when the sound hit you, I've never heard it described like that before. It's very interesting. So it literally felt like a frying pan hitting you in the chest.
It was like a frying pan hits you in the extra vibrations after you get jarred with it. It feels like somebody like beat you right in the chest with a frying pan. That's how it felt. Like the area over the top of my chest, was the shape of a large frying pan would have been hit against you, and you're like, oh, that really rattled. You could feel it deep into your bones when that bass hits you from that voice. And it was just very interesting.
How long did that feeling last for after you got the initial hit?
Oh, I'd say it was gone probably instantaneously. Okay. It was as soon as it hit, it was almost like the vibration from the voice was deep and it was intense, that it just felt like, I don't know how to really describe it any other way than it felt like something really solid hitting you with bass. Like if you're standing too close to a speaker at a concert, that's what it felt like when you can feel that thump hit you in the chest.
Oh, absolutely. And it sounded very similar to the Sierra sounds correct as well.
After I started doing the research and that came up in that search that I did, I was like, that is almost exactly the tone and inflection that I got off of that over there off of the lip that morning. And I played it for my wife, and she was like, that's crazy. That's crazy. And I was like, I've been in the woods for 30 plus years. I was like, have you ever heard anything like that? And she's like, nope. I was like, neither have I. And it ain't owls.
Yeah, absolutely. Even though you didn't have a sighting in that area, there's enough info to go off of that, man. There's something going on at that farm for sure. That is outside the realm of regular animals in that area. It's not turkeys. I would definitely say that. My goodness.
It's not turkeys.
Yeah.
It's very weird. And at first I thought it might be irrational, and using Occam's razor, I was like, I wonder if it's a cow or whatever that might have got out or anything. And then I realized the error of my ways. I was like, there's no stinking cows on here yet. They pull them off during a certain point of the year off of certain areas, and they rotate in and out of certain farms. And I was like, I haven't seen a cow up here since the beginning of turkey season. I was like, it can't be a cow.
Now, remind me, did you ever have a conversation with your buddy that actually leased the farm about what was going on?
No, because like I said, after those certain, I was like, you know what? The next time he leases a farm, he's never going to give me the keys like he did before. He's a pretty straight shooting old timer and everything. And if you say something to him like that, you're like, oh, he's on the sauce or he's on the dope or something like that. So I kept it to myself, and I was like, no, I'm not going to say anything.
Sure. No, I can get it. Yeah, it's a tricky one because it's like you don't want to hurt
And my philosophy was like, there's something really going on up there. As soon as he starts putting cattle back in there or something, we're going to know. We'll know.
Oh yeah, that's true. They'll end up missing or worse. Do you happen to know the actual owner of the property? Is that a conversation that you ever were able to have?
The owner got old, I would say probably in around 2015, 16, and they moved away and they ended up passing away.
Okay, so this is making even more sense. And this is 250 acres, you said, right? It's a pretty big place.
Yeah, it's 250 acres. And to get to it, there's only one way in on a road. Now, if I was to walk out my back door from my house, it would take me almost less time to get to it. I would just have to go up the road about 1.5 miles instead of going 6 miles around to get to the front gate. I could just walk through the woods and get to the back side of this thing. Within driving 1 mile, it'd take me 15 minutes to walk through the woods and get to it. So it's less distance per se from where I live than the drive it takes to get there.
Yeah. So you look at it in a certain way, and I'm pretty convinced by what you told me that there's got to be Bigfoot there. But it's, you have an area, a massive area where there's really not people on it all the time, and it's been like that for years. And then they have hunters show up out of nowhere. It makes sense that they might not be the biggest fans of you guys coming on and messing with their food source, where they're not seeing people for years and years potentially.
And here's another thing too, Jeremiah, that I try to explain this rationally and everything. So around the Mark Twain National Forest, they do timber sales all the time. And I would guess to say the timber areas change so drastically from year to year. Like one year there could be a great stand of pines that's probably about 70 to 80 acres. And then within the next year, it's completely clear cut through there, and that would change habitat. And I see it a lot in my field of deer and turkey hunting and everything. Like when they go in, they cut out certain areas. USDA will do these timber sales to these logging companies. They go in there, they trash these areas, and they cut all the good timber out of it. That's habitat and that's food. So why, if I was an animal and I relied on hunting to keep me alive, why would I stay in an area that doesn't produce food for me? and stuff. So I need to move on to other areas. And there since 2000, I can guess I got in there about 2016 back into the Fort Leonard Wood post for my last duty station. I'd say they've been cutting timber pretty hard around that area since 2016. And that's a lot of habitat to take out of a certain area. Like I would say the area between Fort Leonard Wood and where we're talking about maybe a 6, 7, 8, 9 mile radius. So they've cut a lot of timber and habitat out of there. So I would almost assume that things are moving around they're moving from one homestead to another in there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Since the time you and your wife have started to look more into this subject, have you guys been uncovering other incidents in the same area that you're at, other people having encounters or sightings or anything like that?
I don't really sit there and come out with it at first. And we have a little store that sits up the way from my house. And you go in there and every once in a while you'll catch an old timer in there talking about something that you're like, huh, that's interesting. It's like the same thing. Either they catch a glimpse of something or they heard something that was really weird, or they heard a bang against a tree for 10, 15 minutes. It sounded, one guy said it sounded like somebody was up there with a baseball bat just whacking away at this tree for like 30 minutes and stuff. So like you hear those things and you're like, oh, these are old timers. They've been in the woods a lot longer than I have. A lot of them are cattle ranchers and they have their own large scale properties and stuff. So it carries a little bit of weight when you hear those guys come in and they bring something up like that. So I hear from time to time those things, but it's not as frequent as some of the people that come on your show have a lot of events and stories. Like you'll hear every once in a while from that area. But I would say that the newest one that we have in that area is that one turkey hunter that had that occurrence. I think it was 2023, 24, and he did the interview on video and did the terrain walk and everything with whoever the interviewer was. I'm pretty sure it wasn't you. But it was interesting because I knew the area and I know the topography in that area and everything and how the land lays out. And I'm like, if I was going to hide anywhere, that would probably be where I would hide.
I bet was that Miguel's channel? I bet that was Miguel's channel.
Yeah.
It was. Cool. I'm going to check that out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. He's a great guy.
I think his name's Miguel. At first, like I said, I'm really just starting to investigate into this community and stuff. So I don't know the names of people or channels and stuff. I just find stuff and evidence that is pretty solid, rock solid stuff. And I go with it from there.
Yeah. Sasquatch theory is definitely a go-to for Missouri Bigfoot encounters. Okay. He is that's his focus, but he's got some great stuff from down there. But AP, it has been a really enjoyable conversation with you, finding out more about this area. I haven't talked to a lot of people from this area of Missouri, but definitely keep us in the loop if you hear anything else, or even if you experience anything yourself or your wife does in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me on, Jeremiah.
Hello?
Tommy, how are you?
This is his wife.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi there.
Yeah, we had an experience out here on Clear Creek Road, which we're at right now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we were driving and we were looking for bottles and stuff because there's a lot of old bottles and things that you can find out here. And I had to go to the bathroom really bad. And so I was like, pull over, babe, pull over right here, which is towards the end of Clear Creek Road. It's like really wooded. And I went down this little hill to go to the bathroom. And I started hearing this knock, like it sounded like something hit, like a 2x4 hitting a tree, pretty much. And I was like, what's that? And he's all, hey, what is that to me? And I was like, babe, I have no idea. And he's all, maybe somebody ran over something on the road over there. And I was like, no. And all of a sudden, I swear, the scariest thing I ever freaking experienced. We heard the loudest, most undescribable freaking scream
Yeah,
like we ever heard in our life. It was long, it was drawn out, and you could just feel it like vibrating. And I ran so fast up that hill. We got in that car so fast, but I didn't even know what it was at first. I looked for sounds of animals because I've been to Montana. I've heard bears, I've heard mountain lions, things like that. And it was nothing like that. But I went through sounds of every animal. I couldn't find it. And finally, I was just scrolling through, and I was like, I'll check out Bigfoot and whatever. It was almost identical, the scream that I heard. It was identical, yeah.
That is absolutely bonkers. Thank you for sharing that. Have there been other people that have had experiences in the same area?
Yes, actually. I posted it online at a local discussion chat of things that are mysterious, things like that. And somebody said that they were camping out pretty close to where we were at a few years before, and they had rocks thrown at their tent, like big, huge rocks. And they were pretty freaked out. And there's been footprints too.
Oh, really? How big are the footprints?
From what I saw, probably like 17 inches.
Yep.
At least.
At least.
Here, where's that bracelet?
And that was just the next road over that the guy found those footprints. And it's like an animal reserve kind of thing.
Okay.
But yeah, I do believe, I wasn't a believer. I did not believe in Bigfoot at all until that happened. And I have no explanation for it. It changed me because I can't go in the woods anymore like I used to. I just get so scared.
I'm sorry to hear that. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
But yeah, that's our story.
Thank you for coming up, guys. Is it okay if I use this conversation on my set?
Yes, that's no problem.
All right. Thank you, guys. Good luck in the future.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. What brings you up today, sir?
I don't know. I'm intrigued.
Gotcha. Did you have any sightings or encounters to share of Bigfoot?
Sightings or encounters, but I live on a mountain in Acton, Maine.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, I hear some screams sometimes that make me lock my door and load my shotgun.
Really?
I can't say what it is, obviously, but I've got trees, oak trees, that are snapped off, red oak, and splintered at the top about 10 feet high. There's definitely something out here.
Goodness. And this is happening current day?
And it hasn't happened for months. It usually happens early spring and late fall.
Yep. Yeah, dude. Right on the money. Oh my goodness. This is really interesting stuff. So you've heard screams. And it sounds... Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I also, in the middle of winter, hear knocks. Tree knocks.
Okay. Gotcha. And do you hear those at any other time of year as well?
Excuse me?
Do you hear those any other time of year or just the winter time?
Usually just in the winter time, but then again, I'm generally so busy in the summertime that I wouldn't hear them because I'm always doing logging because I do process my own wood.
Okay. Absolutely. Very interesting. I talked to a hunter that had some weird stuff happen in Kittery. He had a sighting. But I know you're further north of that if you're in Acton. But that's right on the border.
Probably 30 miles north and 20 miles west. So I'm northwest of Kittery.
Gotcha. Yep.
I'm on the New Hampshire, within a mile of New Hampshire.
Yep, absolutely. Wow. It sounds like you're a guy that knows the animal sounds around your area. So it's not a thing where if you're hearing a scream, it's not like a fox or anything. This sounds like it's something unique.
Yes, it's definitely. My brother actually has heard it. He's also heard the knocks. He generally comes up on weekends.
Hmm.
But like last winter, we were putting. It was in right January or February. I can't remember, but we were putting a plow blade on my truck. And while we were in the midst of doing that, he asked me, "What's that knocking sound?" I just smiled and laughed at him because he's a non-believer.
Okay.
I am very much a believer. I actually have a Bigfoot carpet on my wall.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's
Oh, wow.
my sister-in-law makes carpets and she made it for me custom.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. Paul, being a guy who lives in Maine, is Bigfoot, do you hear people sharing accounts of having sightings or anything, or is it not, is it a thing that's not really talked about up there?
It's really not talked about. I honestly think people are afraid to talk about it. I'm not. I have a Bigfoot hoodie that I wear all the time just because I'm 100% a believer. Some things are just strange. I have twisted trees here also.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
They're
Okay.
beech trees, and which is a very hard wood, and something very strong would have to have done it. There's no way the wind could do this.
Paul, is this a conversation I could put on my Bigfoot podcast? Would that be all right?
I have no problem with that.
All right. Yeah, Paul, keep us in the loop if stuff continues to happen. Stan, how are you? Thank you, man.
Hey, no problem. I really enjoy and appreciate what you're doing. Giving people the community talk about this stuff because it can be just as intriguing as it is traumatizing. I'll let you pick because I'm in a spot. I'm active duty. I'm overseas right now, and I'm in a spot where I don't have too many personal experiences happen to me when they used to happen all the time, but my friends and family have. So I got one from my uncle that he reached out to me about, same uncle that I took those photos with when we were taking photos of deer, and one from an old buddy of mine when I was up in Northern California logging.
What area of the country is the uncle one from?
My uncle is in Tennessee, but he likes to move between Tennessee and Kentucky because he finds the area is beautiful. But this is happening, what he described to me was happening in Tennessee.
Gotcha.
Yes, that farm out there that I was talking about.
Okay, gotcha. First off, of course, thank you for your service. You're over there doing what needs to be done. I appreciate that. Thank you, Stan.
Yeah, of course.
I am going to pick good old Northern California.
Oh, you're going to enjoy this. So I was reaching out to a few of my coworkers I still talk to from that company because they were good friends, and I've even had some pretty strange experiences from out there. Nothing crazy significant. I've definitely seen Bigfoot. I've definitely seen it. Like, those photos of my uncle were not the first time, but while I was working there, it wasn't anything crazy. I was like, hey, y'all heard anything about this recently? One of them reached back and said, yeah, actually, I had one pace my truck as I was coming home from work down the mountain. I was like, oh, tell me about that. So what he said was, because when you're logging, you leave the equipment out there, right? You don't just take it home with you. It's too much trouble. So you usually have someone out there watching the equipment, making sure no one steals it, breaks it, whatnot. So he goes his entire night shift doing this. It was his turn. Goes entire night shift doing this. Everything's fine. Until an hour or so before he gets off his shift, he starts hearing like wood crunching, branches breaking, and he's okay, animals, whatever, until it gets close enough to where that's not normal. He said He said it was obvious, like very obvious, right? Big animal that should not be making as much noise as it was. So he thought it was a bear, just a massive bear. So it's like, it is what it is. They're usually skittish. Whatever. So he gets off his shift. Nothing really happens. Starts walking to his truck, and he realizes very soon as he's walking to his truck that he's being paced. He would walk, stop, something would walk with him and stop with him, right? And he's like, all right. So he's freaked out. He gets to his truck as fast as possible, goes to flip that engine, starts to drive off, and drive was easy for the most part until he actually gets onto the main road down the mountain, and he sees a shadow pull up alongside his truck, and he looks off to the left, and he said it was the biggest, meanest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, what are you talking about? Biggest, meanest what? And he's like, I'm pretty sure I caught a Bigfoot, like, pacing my truck, and I was going 30 miles an hour. I was like, there's no way. He's like, yeah, he said it was close enough to where if it reached out his hand, it could grab his side view mirror off his truck. And he said it was like switching between looking down the road and looking at him, almost like in momentum with how he was running, like with his steps. And he said it looked angry, that he was there to begin with. And so I was like, did it do anything? He was like, no, it was just running with me, and it was angry. And I was like, so it didn't attack you or nothing? It's like, no, I don't know what it was doing. I was just freaking out. And he goes, I'm speeding up to 35, 40, 45. And each time he would go to speed up, it would clock right along with him. He said it wasn't until I had to slam on my brakes to hit a turn, mountain roads, they twist, they turn, and the tail of my truck almost spun out, that it had to dodge the tail because it almost spun out into the Bigfoot, and it dipped down off into the woods, and he didn't see it again that rest of the night. And he goes, I thought it was over. I thought I got lucky. I wasn't going to say anything about it until a week later when he realized all the trees around his house, one by one, like over a few days, started getting flipped upside down.
No way. Oh, man.
And I've been to his house, man. Those are ironwood trees that he planted there specifically. Those things do not come up easy, if at all. And he said one by one, he would find these trees completely torn out of now, granted, ironwood trees, they have normal roots, but at the center is a root ball. Keeps them seated into the ground. He said, by the root ball, man. Torn out and planted. And they're big, too. They're like 10, 15, 20-year-old ironwood trees. And he said over the next week, like within 10 feet of the wood line surrounding his house, each and every single one of those trees were flipped upside down. It was like something was trying to tell him to stay there. Like he got the vibe that it was very clear that whatever was flipping around those trees was making sure he knew it was big enough and strong enough and fast enough to make his disappear if it wanted to, so don't leave your house. It was, wow. When I was sitting here, I'm like, I got chills thinking about it. I think imagining that, and I got chills when he was talking about it. Do you think that Bigfoot that you caught pacing your car was the same one? He was like, yes, but I think it had help. And I was like, why? How many trees you got around your property? He's like, I planted 500 of them from my property just to keep the soil down, right? Because he had a bunch of like weed growth and stuff, and he didn't like it, so he planted all those trees. And I was like, dude, so you think he was multiple? He said it had to have been at least 5.
Yeah.
Even as big and as strong as they are, it had to have been a good amount of them to be able to do that in the short time span, which lines up with my thought process of there's no way there's just like one per area. They got to be reproducing somehow. There's got to be little family spots and whatnot. But I have these daydreams of, what if I stumble upon a Bigfoot? Like, I could probably take a small one out, right? Nope. No. Not a chance.
No, probably not. I don't think anyone could, to be honest. Did he tell you, did he just leave it at Northern California, or did he share the area that chase took place in.
The logging sites that we rent out are up by Klamath National Park.
Okay, so it would have been up by Klamath National Park or National Forest. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look up Arcadia,
Yep.
California, and you like on Google Maps and you scroll north
Yep.
a bit, you're gonna see a bunch of subsets, different cabins and homes. He lives in, I don't know which one, but he lives in one of those. And I'm assuming, given that, because I've been there, like I said, it's a bit far off from those like subsections, but still, man, like that's a 2-hour drive almost. And
Oh yeah.
he was saying that it
Definitely.
paced him. He was saying it paced him for about a good hour at those speeds that he was driving home. Like, I can't imagine the amount of stamina and sheer force those animals carry with every single one. I can't fathom it. Just based off what he's describing.
Wow, what an incredible account. That is absolutely bonkers. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Is our conversation one that can be put on the podcast?
Sure, I don't think you would mind.
Okay. Yeah, we have kept him anonymous pretty much. Right, no name.
Yeah, I haven't said his name or nothing.
Okay. Perfect. Dude, I appreciate you coming up. Hopefully you're able to hang out for a while and listen, and maybe we'll hear from you again in the future, dude. Heck
yeah. If I end up going anywhere back to NorCal or somewhere else and I have a more significant experience of myself to share, I'll definitely shoot you a call or hop in one of the lives.
All right. Thank you, Stan, and we'll see you next time, man.
Heck yeah. You take it easy.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going, sir? I'm doing well. How about you?
Not too shabby. Just a quick story. This goes back to last Labor Day weekend, so not too long ago. I live out here in northern Arizona. Hunter, hiker. That's my whole thing. So I was driving someone from the airport here in town to Oak Creek, which is on the way to Sedona. And it's only 2 lanes, 1 lane each way. I went to go drop the lady off at a cabin in Oak Creek. On the way down, there was nothing in the road. We're just chilling. She was taking some photos out the window as we were going down, just trying to take some night shots through the canyon. And we heard a howl. Didn't know what it was. Kept on trekking, paying no mind to it. So we get to the cabin, and she drops off her stuff and then wants me to take her back into town. So we go back the same way we went through the canyon. This time there's a branch on the lane going down. So I went to go turn my brights on, put my flashers on, and you see something hop over the branch, over the railing, and when the lights hit on it, it pauses. And when the lights hit on it, it pauses, turns away from us to lean against a tree with its arm up. So I've never seen anything in that canyon where it, like, intelligible to where it freezes like that and tries to blend into its surroundings. And in comparison to the posts that are along that road, the bottom of a sign to the ground is exactly 7 feet tall. That's the standard for speed signs in Arizona. So I put the flashers on and I get out of the car, and when it hears me get out of the car, it sprints down the hill. I take my flashlight, go to the edge. You can see the foliage is all pushed down, and there's a musky smell, and whatever it was, yeah, that's not a bear. That's none of that, because a bear doesn't stand against a tree with one arm up trying to blend in. And that's all I have to say. And this just happened Labor Day weekend.
Wow. You went after it.
I went to go see what it was, because like I said, I was stopping to get that branch out the road, and then saw that thing hop over the railing and pause by the tree.
Did you get to a certain point then and then decide to turn back, or?
After that, no, the lady yelled at me to get in the car because she saw it too, and I took her back into town.
That's wild, dude. Have you done any research to see if other people have had sightings in that area too?
Yeah. So Oak Creek has a visitor center near a stopping point called Indian Gardens. The next day I went back down to survey the area. a ranger was moving the branch out of the way and clearing the area. And I said, hey, man, this is what I saw. It was an older gentleman in the 60s who goes, yeah, we don't talk about that here, but it's been seen. And that's where he left it at. That was the ranger working out through that visitor center.
Really? So it's called Indian Gardens?
Yeah, so Indian Gardens, there's a little stop with a Forest Service visitor center and ranger station. But the area is called Oak Creek Canyon, and it's on the way to Sedona. So the elevation drops from 7,000 feet down to about 4,000 feet. So you go from alpine, and then that area it turns into like berries, oak trees, and there's a creek with like trout and all that. But yeah, it's a sustainable environment.
No, it's perfect because that's like the Mogollon Rim area. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, dude, there are so many stories over the years about the Mogollon Monster, and you've probably heard them as well, but it's like the same deal, exactly what you experienced, dude. That is so wild. Wow.
Yeah, I had never heard about the whole thing in Mogollon Rim until I started digging after talking to that ranger.
Yep. Oh my goodness, dude, thank you for sharing what you experienced around the real day. I really appreciate it. Is this a story I can share on Bigfoot podcast as well?
Yeah, of course.
All right.
You take care, though, brother.
Thank you for coming out, man. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, pretty good. How you doing?
Hey, great. I saw your comment. It sounded interesting, so I figured I'd invite you up.
Yeah, we from St. Louis. And when we had lost our property, when we lost our home, the night that it was the last night we were going to be there, I was out in the barn packing, and I read lines on our property. None of my neighbors believed me about that. We seen a set of red eyes.
Okay.
It was so high in the air, it didn't register to me that night. It didn't register that night, like how huge this thing was. But when it took off and went down the little valley for 10 seconds, it roared. It was the first time I ever heard a Bigfoot roar, okay? And I said to my buddy, I said, that wasn't a mountain lion, right? He goes, no, it certainly wasn't a mountain lion. Now, we moved 6 nautical miles from where our 25 acres was in a very remote part of our county, okay? And me and my kids were watching that stupid Bigfoot show, finding Bigfoot, and they're smacking wood and stuff, and we'd go back, and we'd take 2 pieces of firewood, and they would answer, okay, with crash. And one night, me and my youngest boy, we heard a bipedal run across the creek, and the creek in our backyard was chest deep. When this thing, it jumped in and went, coosh, 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 coosh. And my kid looked at me. He was like, Dad, that's 2 legs. I go, yeah, that's 2 legs. I'll make the story shorter. A couple months go by. We're smelling these things, okay? A raccoon, you can smell him as soon as he comes up on you close. This thing, they were just so strong and potent. It was like 30 raccoons in a bottle underneath your nose. But anyway, they would throw rocks down this hillside. I'm not believing at this point. Still, I'm not really thinking that this is a big hairy deal. Not yet. And when I was sitting alone after we had a bad quick flash flood on the creek, and the next day I was sitting on the stairs of the creek in the backyard, and I heard a deep guttural voice. I swear to God, this is how it went down. I heard a deep guttural voice. And you never heard no voices around here. There's one clubhouse across the creek, and that doctor that owned it never came out there to enjoy his property. And there were 2 of them this built, and the big one stopped, put his hand on the other one's chest, and they both looked at me. And they both turned and walked up the hillside, and I swear to God, they evaporated halfway up the hill, but you could still hear their foot up that mountainside. I swear to God. Now, I stayed in the Bigfoot closet for many years. I told my 2 sons about this, And they told the mom, like I knew they would. I told them not to because she already thought. Some years later, what you call it, county, I'm not going to say the name of the county. I don't want to create something out there because there's a population of them.
I totally get it. Yeah.
Some years later, a sheriff's department retired officer that he saw the Bigfoot closet. Yeah, because we live right there. We've seen them, seen two of them. And they were leaving stuff for us. When I seen these two entities, I started leaving them fish guts. And I know it sounds crazy, but I started leaving them entrails to animals when I would clean fish and stuff. I don't think they were really respecting that as much as they were the whole chickens. But it took me a long time to figure out. But they were leaving me rocks. I just didn't know they were leaving me rocks. I thought they were carrying rocks for like aesthetic purposes. But yeah, they like gift people stuff. Bigfoots actually trade off. They're not going to stand there and let you give them something. But when you leave them stuff, they leave you stuff right where you left them stuff. I swear they do. And as far as like, when I seen that big red-eyed deal coming down the hill of our property, I seriously think that Bigfoot wanted me to see him. I really do. Because I think he already knew where we was headed 6 miles away, right by where he and his family lived. And man, that sounds crazy, but I think he let me see him and his younger one or whatever on purpose. I really do. And I don't know, I want to move back to that area and just be back in that area. It was when I knew they were close, I had no feeling of I could be in trouble or danger. I felt like I was a little tiny peon and I was the weakest animal in the woods. But sure, when you hear a Bigfoot roar, everything shuts up. It's crazy. When the deepest part of summer where all the insects are just loud, when one of them Bigfoots roar, everything shuts up. It's like silent. And yeah, it's. I think they're way more intelligent than us. I know that. I really do. I think they got it. I tell you what, when I Googled Bigfoot talks the very next day, the very next morning, because they were talking, the big one was talking. Then all of a sudden, I see all kinds of videos where Bigfoots are talking. I had no idea they were communicating audibly until I heard them talking across the creek.
Absolutely.
Then I Google it, and then I heard them California Foots. They were imitating people's voices, and the one saying Marlboro and calling guys names. It's the most fascinating thing. I'm really fascinated with Bigfoots. People that don't believe don't need to believe, but they don't need to come to sites like this and talk about how it's not real because it is real. I think they're in every state of every nation. I really do.
I'll tell you this, though. You mentioned St. Louis, and then you moved outside of it, and it's okay. We don't know anything else. That's fine. But I'll tell you this much. I've gotten reports from all around St. Louis, especially the area, Weldon Spring. Oh, my goodness. Weldon Spring area, August Bush.
Big family out there.
South St. Louis, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah.
You said South St. Louis, and that's, people don't understand that. But South St. Louis, like county, here's what I think. I think there's a great possibility that they're actually like, if we got skinwalkers, if they're seeing skinwalkers in St. Louis City, I'm willing to bet there's a Bigfoot or two. See, I think there's some cave dwelling Bigfoots as well. I really do, because
Sure.
I really do. I think there's a lot of cave dwelling Bigfoots. Now, I do know that they're acclimated to the weather and that like they can handle any winter storm and stuff. But have you ever seen any videos of the Bigfoot babies that are up in the tree?
Yeah.
And like still as can be? Have you seen that?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yep, I've seen
like
that.
The Bigfoot baby will be like a big clump and he's just staying in the tree and not moving. On my Google Maps, you can see them Bigfoots in the trees. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
if you know the area and there's sightings, you get your Google Maps and you zoom in on that, and you let on a nice phone, on a good phone, you can see these dark round balls of fuzz in the trees. I think they're Bigfoots. I really do. Baby Bigfoots. They sit still while the parents go out and do their thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this. So you said real quick that there's also skinwalker sightings in St. Louis right now?
In St. Louis City, in St. Louis County, yeah. It's funny because the more people that start telling me about this, I'm pretty sure they've been here forever, but they come from underground. Around here they do. Around here, I'm pretty sure they come from the caves and they come up. Pretty sure. But yeah, they're seeing these 2 or 3. I've heard it 2 times now up at this park, which is it's unreal. The only way a skinwalker could be at this park is from access to the cave, because we have a huge underground cave system that runs all around the St. Louis County and city area. Sure. It's huge. But I'm pretty sure that's where they're coming from. People have these sightings where they hear this demonic howling, and I tell them, man, get on the internet and look up skinwalkers, because if it's like beyond human and it looks like it's shape-shifting, it's most likely just a skinwalker. It doesn't have to be a demonic entity. It could be very well a entity that's from another dimension that's been here forever, like the skinwalkers.
Is this a conversation I can put on my Bigfoot podcast as well?
Oh, yeah. I'm not afraid to, anymore. I came completely out of the Bigfoot closet, because once the sheriff's department retiree said he's seen the 9-footer, then I told everybody I knew from that community, we were playing with them, clapping wood together, feeding them, and then I seen the 2 walking and talking together. It was crazy, man. It was crazy. He's a huge 9-footer. He was like a dark, blackish, brownish, grayish kind of. He was dark, not like you really see a lot of the Bigfoots. He was super dark brown, but with a little tint of gray. And the short one, I must say, was like 7 foot. He wasn't little by no means, but just the one I seen was huge. The one big one was huge. But this little one was more of a peachy, like a dirty brown with a little bit of like a peachy to it. It was weird, man. They're 2 different color foots. The big black one was super huge and wide, and the younger, smaller one was like, it was huge, but it wasn't like this. The black one was a monster. He was like huge. Just, it's weird. I can see him to this day, but I don't want to say his shoulders were 5 foot wide, but I know his shoulders were like super wide, and his legs were tree trunks. It was insane. And you know what's funny? I looked and looked for footprints, and I never found a print one. Me and my sons both, all 3 of us, we combed that place. But it's funny, because it seems like they were running and crossing the creek in areas, and they were running through areas. They weren't like running through the open fields. They'd run through the pasture that had growing in it, and they'd run through I laid on my belly one night because something was going through these pawpaws. If it had been a Bigfoot, I'd died of a heart attack. But I laid on my belly one night. I thought I was going to sneak up on a Bigfoot eating the pawpaws. We had a paw patch right by our house, and I laid on my belly, and this big old hog was the one that was eating all these pawpaws up the ground. He scared me so bad. I almost had a heart attack from the hog, the wild hog. Foots will take a big deer, and they'll take a big deer and they'll throw it up in a tree. Just can't get it.
I've heard that as well.
That I know for sure, because the neighbors around us were talking about mountain lions. They were talking about mountain lions dragging these deer up the tree. And finally I asked him, I said, "Where's that deer at?" And he told me where. I went down and looked. He was talking about a big 10-point buck, like 200 pounds. I was like, man, there's no way a cat did that. A cat didn't take that. This deer was like 30 foot in the air in the tree. I was like, there's no way a cat did that. I was like, it didn't make no sense. I didn't put it all together until years later that it was actually Bigfoot doing that. But yeah, they'll treat their food because there's nothing else to get to it except for the birds of prey. And yeah, they're real smart. They're real smart.
Wow, what a wild conversation, man.
Anyway,
This has been
I got
great
company coming. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. I hope to talk to you later. Have a good one, man. Hey, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing well. What brings you up tonight?
I had an experience one time. There's been several, but I was sitting on my porch one night having a cigarette, and I own a pretty good piece of land, and it was about like 10 o'clock, and I seen this like round circle glowing in the woods, probably about 60, 70 yards from me, and I'm real familiar with the area, and I'm looking at it, it's about the size of a golf ball. And I'm like, what in the world is that? Because I had one of them big barn lights. And I said, what in the world is that? And I'm looking, and then all of a sudden, I thought maybe it was like a possum or a coon up on a tree, because it looked like it was around 8 foot, 7 foot. And I was like, it must be a possum or a coon on a tree, and it was showing eye shine. But it was still odd, because it was in the woods where I've never seen deer do it. And all of a sudden, what I thought was an eye, it moved sideways and 2 eyes poked out the tree. I'm like, what is that? And it had a good 10, 15 inch spread in between the eyes. It was like a cow head.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I was like, what in the world? And where I'm sitting on the porch, I didn't have my light on under the porch, but I had a light shining toward the front yard, security light, so it couldn't see me. I didn't think. And all of a sudden, it went back behind the tree, and this went on for about 15, 20 minutes. It played peekaboo. It stick its head out, like it would come out behind the tree, go back in, come back in. And I was like, so ain't this, but the thing of it was, I've been hearing other stories, and it's been red that shine. This was like a beer. If you shine through a light through a beer bottle, that color.
Is that like yellow or amber?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. And I'm watching this, but and I was like, and another thing was too, I had a birdhouse at the edge of my yard, and I knew the area where it was, so I could take from where I was sitting, I could take that birdhouse and get a measurement of where I knew exactly what tree that it was behind. And it was a big white oak. It was a white oak, a good 20 inch something, good wide one. And so I had my buddy, the following couple of days, I had my buddy go up there with a PVC pipe, 10 footer, and a measuring tape. And I sat in that same spot, and I had that birdhouse to go by. I knew exactly where the eyes was. And I measured it. And it was 8 foot on the dot. It was 8 foot, the eyes from the ground. And I was like, wow. Now, I've had several encounters, but I've never seen nothing, just the eye shine. I'll take that back. I was 14, and I was on a juvenile hunt. And see, we have over 80, 90 acres here. And I've been here a while, and I was 14, and I was hunting on a juvenile hunt. And I had a property line that my dad wouldn't let me go past. He said, don't go past our property line and go on this other guy's property. I snuck past it, and I trailed up there, and I was walking around, and I got to the top of this hill. And I was sitting there, and I just got this feeling something was watching me. I don't think of nothing about no Bigfoot. I didn't know nothing about Bigfoot, really. And I looked down at my feet, and I'm leaning against this tree, and there's these big pile of shavings. And I'm like, wow, what's that? And where I'm at, we don't have bears. And I look up above my head, and there's, on each side of the tree is like claw marks going down the tree. Deep, deep. And every bit of like a foot long scratch going down each side of the tree, enough to make a pile of wood chips. I was like, that's weird. So I got the creepy feeling anyway, so I start to leave that. And I walk down to the creek. There's a creek down at the bottom of the holler, and I'm walking down it trying to be quiet, walking on the rocks. And I got my rifle in my hand, got my orange on. It was deer season. And I'm walking down the creek quiet and just creeping. And I'm looking, I'm a good hunter. Even at that age, I was a good hunter. And I'm looking and everything. And the trees are spread apart pretty good. There wasn't much brush. And I'm looking, and I don't see nothing, but I get close to my property line, and I don't know what it was, but it scared me so bad. It was right beside me, like the creek. I'm in the creek, walking down the creek. Whatever it was sitting by a tree on the side of this creek, and it said, "You don't need to be back here." But the weird thing was, it wasn't a hunter. It didn't have no hunter orange on. It had a ghillie suit that I thought, and it scared me so bad that I wouldn't look at it in its eyes. I wouldn't look because I was just froze. But in my peripheral, I could tell it was long, shaggy, green, just like a ghillie suit, but lower like moss. And I was like, so I just kept walking. I kept walking and I didn't look back. Because the weird thing what scared me so bad is that I didn't see it. It was right up on me and it was huge. And I didn't see it. That's what freaked me out, because I was very observant as I was walking down the rock trying to be quiet. But I didn't put that to no Bigfoot either at that time. I didn't put that to no Bigfoot either. And there's been many mornings that I'd go hunting and have something walking beside me.
Oh, man.
Yeah. I'd go 30 minutes for daylight, because I'd have a good long stretch to get into my stand. And I would start out dark, and I would be walking, but I never thought about no Bigfoot, nothing like that. And I would be walking, and there would be something right beside me, stepping along with me. And I would try to catch it. It was so obvious and quiet, I would try to catch it. I would be walking, and then I would stop, and it would stop. Normally, it would stop the same time I would, but I would catch it. Every once in a while, I would make one more step. And I told my brother about it, and he went with me one morning, and it happened. And he said, "I'll be down." It was crazy. You'd be walking, and it would be like 5 or 6 feet from you, walking in the leaves with you, footstep to footstep, and you could stop and catch it one step ahead of you. You know, like, shh. And my brother was like, "What is that?" I always thought I thought it was a deer. But I knew, in the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't, because it was bipedal, right? And yeah, that happened there. And then the big thing that happened was I had to deal with rock throwing. This was a pretty good one. My sister had a trailer on this land, and wasn't nobody living in it for about a year. And it had a clearing. So I decided to move in, and I was doing some painting and stuff like that, and there wasn't no electricity hooked up down here. I was doing painting and stuff like that, and I had my dog with me, he was like a blue tick hound dog, wasn't scared of nothing. Coon hunting dog, everything. This dog wasn't scared of nothing. Like I said, this place has been sitting over for about a year, and with nobody there, and we're talking everything's off the road, the main road. It's very secluded, and I'm doing painting and whatever, and I had me a battery TV, a battery light, and sleeping bag, stuff like that. And I had everything in my truck to paint and everything. I was gonna spend a couple of days just to mess around, get it ready. Gabby, my dog, was on the porch, and it got dark, and I started cleaning up and everything, and started watching a movie. And Gabby, she was out there on the porch, and I had everything on, and all of a sudden these little rocks started tapping my window, and I had the window cracked to let fumes out. But these little rocks, like peas, they were had to be little tiny rocks, and they was hitting the window. And I didn't have no trees around the trailer at all. No trees. And a good 50 feet, at least 50 yards to the edge of the woods, the wood line. And these little pebbles just kept tapping the window. And I was like, what is that? And I don't even have neighbors for 100 acres around. It's no neighbors. And I was like, what is that? And it kept going and going. And I was like, it just didn't make no sense. It couldn't have been an animal or nothing. These were aggressively hitting the window and bouncing off the window. And I said, all right. So I said, somebody's messing with me. And this is, take this in mind, it was 2:45 in the morning. This is when this started happening. And I said, I was like, somebody must be messing with me. Ain't nobody been here. Somebody's messing with me. I take my pew-pew and I creep outside, and I didn't see my dog, and I didn't see Gabby, and it was quiet out there. No bugs, nothing. I'm talking about a creepy quiet. And all of a sudden I finally heard a little whimper. I said, what in the world? And I go to my truck, and my dog is up under the truck, whimpering. And I'm like, what in the world? And I didn't have, take in mind, I didn't have electricity. And when I went out, and if it was somebody messing with me, I wasn't going to let them know where I was at. So I went out in the dark. And I ain't thinking about no Bigfoot or nothing. But when I went under there and I seen Gabby shaking like that and whimpering, that scared me. And plus the creepy quiet too. I had a shed over there, and I went over I was reaching out, I couldn't see nothing. I mean, and plus it was dark, so dark you couldn't even see your hand right in your face. And I knew where a shed was, so I reached over there and got to the corner of the shed and sat on a 5-gallon bucket for an hour, waiting to hear a leaf or something to let me know who's messing around or where it's at or what. And I didn't hear nothing. It's dead quiet. So I came on in the house, turned my little electric light back on, and all of a sudden, here it goes again, throwing it again. Rocks hitting the windows again, little tappings. I'm like, what in the world? I'm like, and I thought about it. I wasn't even thinking about no Bigfoot. I was like, man, what is a ghost? What is this? And why is Gabby scared to death? This is really freaking me out, man. I'm like, what in the world? I'm going to tell you, the next day I went back to painting, doing everything that I do. I was going to stay one more night. At 2:45, at the same time, it happened again. This time with bigger rocks. These rocks were about 2 inches wide. And they didn't hit the window. They hit the top of the roof and rode off the roof into the porch. And loud. So I went out the door and just unloaded in that direction. And then that was that. But the next morning I picked up the rocks off the porch. When they rode off the porch there and landed on the porch, rode off the roof, landed on the porch. And yeah. And see, I didn't think no Bigfoot. Then one day I was watching a show on TV. It was about a cop or something. And he was going out through there going camping, and they started throwing rocks. And I said, you know what? That's the same thing that happened to me.
Oh, yep. Hey, we got to ask you real quick. Everyone is freaking out. So what happened to Gabby during that story? Were you able to get Gabby back inside, or?
Oh, yeah. Oh, Gabby, she just that night, she wouldn't come out from under the truck. She wouldn't do it. She was whimpering and shaking and was staying under the truck. And that's when I got the creeps. When I reached under, I was like, Gabby, girl, come here. Come talk to her. Come here, girl. She wouldn't come out, and she was shaking and whimpering like that, real soft. And how quiet it was just an eerie feeling. Eerie.
Okay, but Gabby's
up. When the sun come up and everything, she's fine. Yeah. But
wow. Oof. So
yeah,
incredible.
I had no idea about no Bigfoot or nothing, but then I started putting stuff together, and I'm like, this could be.
Absolutely. Man, thank you so much for coming up. Are you able to share the general area where this has been happening in?
I'd rather not.
No problem. Not. At least the state, maybe, or?
Oh, the state? Yeah, Tennessee.
Okay, that's my guess. Yeah, that's no problem. Is this a thing where I can use the audio from this conversation for the Bigfoot podcast that I have?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
I was sitting there listening to you. I was like, I might go ahead and just tell them what happened to me. But yeah, I've had the gifting part. See, I didn't know nothing about that either, and I was getting that too. The cool thing about that one was I had a bunch of wood that I had stacked up real neat in the backyard, and I threw a tarp over it, right? And the funny thing was I told my wife, I said, it looks like a tent, because I had a tarp over it. I said, it looks like a tent. And I want you to know, I came out the other day, next day, and it had a rock, huge rock, laying in the middle of that. And something had to put it there. It was a huge rock laying in the middle. And wasn't nobody but us. You know?
This is some wild stuff that happens in Tennessee. Thanks for hanging with me today.
Yeah, man, no problem.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bigfoot Society podcast. Every encounter we share reminds us that the world is bigger and stranger than we think, and that the truth is often hiding just beyond the tree line. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the channel on YouTube, hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode, and share this with a friend who's into mysteries, monsters, or the unexplained. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcast, please follow the show there and leave us a 5-star positive review, because all that helps more people discover the show. And remember, if you or someone you know has had a Bigfoot sighting, please, I'd love to hear from you. So email me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com and let's start the conversation. If you haven't gotten a chance yet, check out our membership community over at www.bigfootsocietypodcast.com. And that's where you can hear tomorrow's episode today, early and ad-free, and members-only episodes every week. Also, it's a place to connect with other people that are into the Bigfoot subject as much as you are. Thanks again for following along with the Bigfoot Society. Until next time, keep your eyes open, trust your gut, and never stop asking what else might be out there. And see you in the woods.